Will work?
I'm live, I think. Check it once.
No. Okay, it's working.
Yeah, yeah.
Will work?
Do you want me to go, Prachi or Neha?
So you can
Great.
start.
Sir, it's live. You can start now.
Yes, sir, you can start.
Okay, great. So, good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure, talking to students from my alma mater. And the topic that we picked for today is about, a crisis, innovation, e-commerce. How do we innovate in a crisis? And what are some of the changes that e-commerce may be going through? So let me just start with, what is a crisis? I think we are going through some really, really extraordinary times at this point of time. In this century, there have been three crises, three large ones. The first one was the 9/11. Second was the credit crisis of 2008, which brought down the global economy. And the last one is what we're going through now. I think the current one is the worst of the lot because it's a medical crisis. Nobody seems to understand this well at all. The economies have begun getting impacted. People are locked down at home worldwide. This is perhaps the biggest lockdown in the history of humanity. And in India itself, 1 billion plus people staying at home. A lot of livelihoods have got impacted. And, we don't even know when things will, get back to normal at all. So basically, a crisis can strike anytime, anywhere. And once in a while, there are some early warning signs, and the writing on the wall is perceptible to a discerning eye. And with some foresight, one can even plan for such an eventuality. But on most occasions, including this, a crisis is a bolt from the blue. It hits you by surprise. You are taken by surprise. You don't even know what has hit you. A crisis could be very specific to your business, your brand, your company, your industry. On the other hand, a crisis could also strike at a macro level like it has struck now and engulf a whole range of businesses across the globe. A crisis can also be very personal. A very, very deep personal crisis can impact an individual as badly as another crisis. A crisis could decimate a complete industry, but it could also spawn off a lot of innovation. So what I will do is I will just take some examples, from my own personal experience as well as history in terms of how crisis has impacted companies and has also maybe helped drive innovation. The first example I will take was from a company I worked for, which was Taxi for Sure. This was sometime in 2014, and Taxi for Sure and Ola Cabs were in the space of taxi aggregation, exactly like Uber was doing in the US. Both these companies were using technology to provide customers with cabs on demand. And I was part of Taxi for Sure. Both these companies were doing well. Both these companies were backed by strong investors, and both the investors believed that by being early, in this market, you have a first mover advantage. And they also believe that this market will be an oligopoly or a monopoly, which means that the quicker you move in, the bigger the market share you get, the better the chances of getting to the leadership position. It was also believed that if these two companies attain significant market share quickly, then Uber will find it difficult to get a foothold. So that was the belief, and both these companies had raised sufficient capital. And sometime in October 2014, Ola tied up with SoftBank and got a deal of $210 million. That was big finance. That was big money they raised. Taxi for Sure also was in talks with investors to raise a similar amount of money. And sometime in end November, Raghu was in the US. Raghu, the founder CEO, was in the US talking to investors to actually tie in the loose ends for the next round of funding. Unknown to Raghu, unknown to most people, sometime on December 6th in Delhi, an Uber driver raped a female passenger. And that changed the world upside down. There was complete outrage against the incident. There was outrage against the taxi aggregation industry. It was believed by a lot of government agencies that this nascent industry is not on the right side of law. They were violating a particular set of laws, and this industry itself was taking shape. And this incident seemed like the last straw on the camel's back. And the public outrage was against the taxi aggregation business and not against the law and order situation in Delhi, which resulted in an event like this. That's pretty surprising, but that's how public reactions tend to be, and that's how many times India has reacted to crisis. And at that point of time, all investors got into wait and watch position. They said, you know what, that we are not going to invest. We can't be investing when there is so much uncertainty about the future of this industry itself. So Raghu spoke to them, tried to explain to the investors, you know what, that this is India. This is a knee-jerk reaction. After the television anchors stop covering this and move on to something different, the governments as well as everybody else will evaluate the situation more rationally. We'll realize that this industry is solving a real problem of urban commute, and things will get back to normal. But nobody was obviously prepared to listen. Taxi for sure ran out of cash and had to sell out. So sometimes a crisis, whatever you do, hits you like a bolt from the blue, and you can do nothing about it. You will go down. You will, be killed. And that's what happened to Taxi for sure. It was acquired by Ola, and the founders, in some ways resurrected from the ashes, went on to, become very powerful angel investors. So the lesson is that sometimes you cannot avoid a crisis. Whatever you do, whatever right steps you may take, a crisis will pull you down. And these can be some examples. All you can do is try to, resurrect from the ashes and make the best in your second avatar. I'll also talk to you about some historical examples. And in 1453, anyone interested in history would know this, that after more than 2 months or nearly 2 months of siege, the Ottoman Turks took Constantinople, leadership of Sultan Mahmud II, and this was the end of the Byzantine Empire, and in some ways also the end of the Roman Empire, because the Byzantine Empire was actually the Eastern Roman Empire. It was nearly 1,500 years old Roman Empire which came to an end, and that was the beginning of the Ottoman Turks. And gradually the Ottoman Turks spread into Eastern Europe as well as Asia. This was the second time that Europe was experiencing Asian might. The first time was sometime in 700 AD, when the Arabs crossed the Mediterranean at the Gibraltar and took Spain. And this was the second time that this was happening. And the Turks cut off the land routes to Asia. And this crisis actually sparked off some of the most frantic searches for alternate sea routes to Asia and the rest, India and the rest of Asia. It actually unleashed the spirit of adventure and enterprise across Europe. In the process, the Portuguese, found a route to India, sea route to India from around the southern tip of Africa. It may not sound, it was not actually as simple as it sounds. It's not that you just follow the coast of Africa, turn around at the bottom and get into the Arabian Sea and reach India. It wasn't as simple as that at all. So there were no motorboats those days. They were just, boats that used wind power, and therefore you had to wait for the right direction of the prevailing winds. Actually, Vasco da Gama went almost as far as Brazil because the winds were not supportive, and only when the winds turned supportive could he return and reach Arabian Sea and therefore India. Similarly, Magellan went around the world. Finally, I think humanity realized that the world is really, really round. Columbus discovered the whole new world, South America, North America. So this incident of the Turks cutting off the land route to Asia sparked off the biggest, sense of adventure in the history of mankind. We discovered, North America, South America, the fact that the earth was round, everything. And this was pretty exciting. And a lot of the things that we hear about Renaissance in Europe was also in some ways, people say, historians do attribute, one of the factors which resulted in this was the influx of Greeks from the Byzantine Empire into Italy. and the cultural intermix between Italians and the Greeks resulted in the Renaissance. And the point I'm trying to make is that every crisis has in it the seeds of innovation. And the reverse also is true, which is that every great innovation in some ways also results in some kind of a crisis. So trade routes were discovered, but along the trade routes, germs were carried by traders, by invading armies, by rodents on the ships. More than 10% of European population was wiped out by the plague. And actually advances in transportation technology helped in faster movements of goods and people, but also helped in faster movements of disease. And today, disease moves at the speed of a jet aircraft, obviously, and rumor moves at the speed of light. So I don't know if you've heard of this book called Guns, Germs and Steel, in which Jared Diamond explains that one of the reasons why the Europeans were able to rapidly colonize both North America and South America were because of the germs that they took along with them, germs to which they had immunity, but the local populations had not yet attained herd immunity for those diseases. Unfortunately for the local populations, there were no germs that were devastating for the invading Europeans. So Chinese germs went to Europe, created the plague. Chinese germs have now gone to Europe and the rest of the world, creating the coronavirus and the COVID-19, big crisis that we are seeing. I'll give you just one more incident and then maybe I'll just talk about a few other things. I'll talk about, the fact that some companies and brands can be hit by crises like these. So, for example, sometime in 2015, Nestle experienced a crisis. Maggi is a very well-known brand of Nestle and had attained market dominance in the instant noodles market. But in 2015, Indians were shocked to hear that Maggi noodles were banned. And they were banned because some tests indicated they had high lead content. And Maggi noodles were extremely popular in India. The kids loved them because they were, suited for the Indian palate. They were customized for the Indian palate. The housewives loved Maggi because they were supremely easy to prepare. So it was an extremely popular product, had gained huge market lead over the next competitor. But in 2015, the regulators banned Maggi. It was a bolt from the blue for Nestle. And the way Nestle responded wasn't great at all. The way they responded was they began challenging this. They began questioning the regulatory authorities. Instead of collaborating with them and trying to find out, whether the tests were accurate, not accurate. And therefore, the authorities also obviously were not happy with this and took on Nestle. The battle actually went deeper and deeper. And countries in the rest of the world as well began wondering if the regulators in India had stumbled upon something that they had missed out. As a result of which they began testing, a lot of Nestle products. So what Nestle should have done was responded to this crisis in a slightly different way, which is not shown, righteous indignation, which was treated as, arrogance by the rest of the communities in India. And they should have collaborated with the authorities to figure out what is it that they could do. Can they take more samples? Then that spirit of collaboration was missing. So in all these crises, a couple of things clearly stand out. One is, if you want to get out of a crisis quickly, you need to move out of denial. And there is a book by, Elizabeth, Ross, and I think it was David Kessler who co-authored this book with her. The title of the book is Of Grief and Grieving. Elizabeth had also written a book earlier called Of Death and Dying. And in the second book, which is Of Grief and Grieving, they talk of a framework which is about 5 steps to get over a long grief, which is move from denial to acceptance very quickly. And there are multiple stages to this. You move from denial to anger, and then one can go into bargaining, one can go into depression, and then finally acceptance. The faster you move from denial to acceptance, the better you are able to deal with a crisis. So that's extremely important. So in any situation, whether it's a personal crisis or a crisis for the brand that you manage, or a crisis like this, which is impacting the entire globe, it's important for you to move from denial to acceptance. Your business can be hurt, your business can be decimated, and you could lose your reputation, as happened to Nestle. You could have a personal loss when you lose a child. It could be terrible, or when you lose a parent. But an incident has happened, so you need to get from denial to acceptance quickly. The faster you get there, the better you're able to deal with the crisis. I'll also just talk a little bit about innovation, and then I'll talk about specifically BigBasket. Fortune magazine had published a book called The Greatest Business Decisions Ever Taken. It was edited by a bunch of editors. I don't remember who was the lead editor at Fortune at that point of time. And one of the stories, or one of the greatest business decisions that they list in that, is about getting Steve Jobs back. Apple getting Steve Jobs back after he was pushed out. So Apple had fired Steve Jobs at one point of time because he was not able to work very collaboratively with the teams, and the board felt that he wasn't the right person to lead the company at that point of time. So that's how they had let him go. And Apple went through a crisis of their own, and they believed that at some point Steve Jobs was the right person to lead the company again. And this decision of bringing Steve Jobs back is rated as one of the best business decisions for the way he changed Apple as a company, the kind of products, iconic products it created. And what Steve Jobs did in his second avatar, which was different from his first avatar, was that he realized innovation is possible only if every part of the company respects every other part. Every team respects every other team. And earlier, he actually ensured that the different components of innovation, which is the design team as well as the ops team, they were always at loggerheads. And he ended up taking sides because he came from the design side, and he was opposing the operations people who were doing sales, people who were running operations. He felt that they were not somebody who understood what what a great product Apple was. But I think in the second avatar, he realized that, and that made a difference. He got the soldiers and the artists, metaphorically speaking, to work well together, to respect each other well. And in fact, Tim Cook, who is currently the CEO of Apple, who succeeded Steve Jobs, was not identical to Jobs at all. He came from a different background, which is from operations. He was from the soldier background, whereas Jobs was from the artistry background. So I think it's very important. While this, is a great observation, there is a book called Loonshots. In that's book authored by Sefi Backel. If you can read it, you must read it. He uses a very simple framework for explaining innovation. I think that framework, many people who work for companies intuitively have always understood this well. But I think what frameworks do is that they can simplify or explain something that you have been doing very intuitively in a manner that anybody can get it. And Sefi Backel uses a very simple framework, two parameters, which is a 2x2. The first parameter on the x-axis, which is separation of those who think into the future and those who ideate from those who are executing day-to-day stuff. The rhythms of the two are very different. The nature of talent required for both is very different. So the first point he makes is that separate the people who are thinking of the future, who are ideating for the future, from those who are running day-to-day operations. The two cannot be the same. The second parameter on the y-axis, which he differentiates, is that he says that differentiation is based on the extent of interaction between these two teams. The extent of interaction could be low or it could be high. So you have four unique situations: separation, high, interaction high, separation high, interaction low, separation low, interaction high, separation low, interaction low. He says that a combination which gets innovation going is high separation and high interaction. Just understand this a little bit, it's very important. Just by separating these two, but not having sufficient interaction, results in poor respect for each other that these two functions will have. Because they don't interact, the day-to-day ops folks will think that the other guys are sitting in an ivory tower. They don't understand ground reality. And those who are, innovating and thinking up of new ideas feel that guys who are running operations don't understand new ideas. They are not open. They are very close-minded. So therefore, great innovations never really take off, or rather great ideas never take off. This is the situation. The only situation where innovation takes off is when the radar engineer who comes up with the radar is actually sitting with the pilot on the fighter aircraft and trying to see what are the challenges a pilot is facing when using the radar, and using those challenges or knowledge of those challenges to be able to make changes to the equipment is what makes an innovation work, because it's not the first design that's going to work. It's about feedback from the field staff who are using your product to be able to make the relevant changes so that it is actually usable. So I think this is a very important thing that you should remember. And I would suggest, if you have the time, do read that book. Some parts of the book are really interesting. Some parts tend to become a little boring, and he stretches a point too much at times. But the essence is there, and you get the essence. And the other point he makes is that there are two types of innovations. There is a P-type innovation and an S-type innovation. The P-type innovation is a product innovation, a jet engine, an iPhone, or an iPad, for example, Polaroid camera. They are all the P-type innovations. They are, great products, but they are few and far between. He talks of the S type of innovation, which is that a lot of which a company like BigBasket would do, or even a company like Amazon would do. It is about how do you deliver outstanding customer experience on scale every time. Just take a simple example. A delivery boy comes to your doorstep delivering your grocery. 20 items you order, you have to get those 20 items, which means that whatever you have ordered should be there in the stock at the point of time they are picked for you. If you order 20 items and when we pick your order, only 18 are available and 2 are not, you have to end up going to a physical store for those 2 products. You will be frustrated. You came to shop with BigBasket because you wanted to avoid a visit to the store. And if we force you to visit the store for those 2 items, you might as well buy the remaining 18 from the store as well. So we need to ensure that our processes and technology work in such a manner that we are able to deliver all the 20 items to you. We also need to ensure that the delivery boy follows process, which means that he brings a bunch of crates to your residence. The crates are sealed using plastic threads. The plastic threads or ropes need to be cut. The delivery boy cannot just rip open the crate covers. He needs to carry a cutter, which means in the hub where he starts or departs from, there have to be cutters. And the cutter has to be picked up, not one time, not 100 times, a million times every time, which means the cutters must be in place. If some cutter is lost, it must be replaced. The pouch has to be tied around the waist. There must be the invoice the delivery boy carries. The delivery boy needs to smile. The delivery boy needs to be very friendly. The delivery boy needs to check whether the customer is happy at the end of the delivery and check whether you've got all your 20 items. And this needs to be done every single time, millions of times. And that's the thing, which is that on scale, many of these beautiful processes, which are simple to understand, fail. And therefore, for someone who's sitting outside of a company like this, will not be able to even understand what is innovative about it. So any company cannot do this easily because behind the seemingly simple thing, many of the complex things need to dovetail beautifully. They need to dovetail and work well together millions of times, every time, consistently. And that kind of innovation is called the S type of innovation. So broadly, I've talked about 2 frameworks. How should companies innovate? We talked about separation of these 2 and level of interaction. And I also talked about the 2 types of innovations, P types and S type. I'll talk about this in the BigBasket context. So in the BigBasket context, for example, the moment the country went into lockdown on 25th March, Janata curfew. 22nd March, Janata curfew. 25th of March was the lockdown started. We began receiving a large number of orders. the traffic to our website and app increased 4 to 5 times. The app began crashing. The website began crashing. We had to work with Amazon Web Services to increase our capacity and make our, server and architecture very, very robust. So we did that, and we didn't have capacity to deliver. Imagine if the customers place a million orders, a day, and we have the capacity to deliver a million orders, then everything is hunky-dory. But imagine that 1 million orders, customers want 5 million. 5 million customers, 5 million orders they want a day. And we don't have people because they are locked down at home. They are scared to turn up for work. And we have capacity only for 0.3 million orders. Now see the gap. Demand is 5 million, capacity is 0.3 million. You can imagine the amount of frustration. The moment our site opens up, slots open up, in 10 seconds, the slots will get closed because the demand was so high. And this was causing frustration. So we had to solve a problem. And that problem was, how can we get more with less? We had less manpower. How could we get this less manpower to deliver more stuff, to pick more stuff? So we just simply thought out of the box. You know what? Our assortments are 20,000. We have 20 to 25,000 assortment, number of SKUs. And we have large warehouses. And a picker has to walk almost 10 kilometers every day to pick customer orders, because each item is stocked in different parts of the warehouse. We said that we will reduce the number of SKUs from 25 to 30,000 to 2,000 to 3,000. In every warehouse, we said we'll bring it down to between 2 and 3,000. And we also said that all these 2 to 3,000, we will try and co-locate, in such a way that a delivery boy, a picker, does not have to walk these 10 kilometers. All these 3,000 items will be close to one another, co-located, so that they don't have to go beyond this. And therefore, instead of walking 10 kilometers, they just had to walk 2 kilometers. We did simple things, which is that our warehouses also supply dark stores. From the dark stores, we deliver products to customers, orders to customers. And these dark stores are located in different parts of the city. Many, many dark stores. And these dark stores are fed by our mother warehouses. A dark store has to, ask a mother warehouse, place an indent. And the dark store could place any indent they wanted. So for example, if a Kindle water bottle comes in lots of 20, they could order 27 Kindle water bottles or 123 Kindle water bottles. We changed all that. We said now stores can only requisition in lots, which means multiples of 20. Therefore, picking in the warehouses was simple. You just had to go and pick a lot of Kindle water bottles, bag of 20, pack of 20, and move it to the warehouse, to the stores. So picking became much easier. And we also opened up slots for a full 1 week. Earlier, what we would do, we didn't have to have slots for a week. If you placed an order, you would get a slot today, you would get your order delivered today or tomorrow at best or at worst. So at best today, at worst tomorrow. But now we said we'll open up slots for the full 1 week. And what we did earlier was that we reserved stuff for you, which means let's say that there are 12 biscuit packets, Britannia biscuit packets in the store, and you order 10 as a customer. Those 10 are blocked for you. A next customer who comes into our app or website will not see those 10, will see only 2, because we've reserved those 10 for you. Because if those 10 are visible to the second customer also will place an order, and therefore one of the customers is not going to get it. So to ensure that customers got what they ordered, we had to follow this process of blocking or reserving stock based on customer orders. Now that we opened up slots for 1 week, we thought, why should we reserve stock? Because if if a customer has ordered 10 packets of Britannia biscuits today, and another customer has ordered same 10, which are to be delivered 5 days from now, we have those 5 days for Britannia to come and replenish our warehouse. So make those 10 visible to the second customer as well, those who are going to get deliveries later in the week. So by doing this, some customers, we found that did not get what they ordered, obviously, because, some double reservation things happen. And we found that that's a problem that the customers were willing to live with, which is they did not want to see 50% or 60% of stuff out of stock. They would rather get 90% of what they asked for. Earlier, we provided them 100% of what they ordered, but we were okay, customers were okay as long as it was coming down to 90%, but slots were available for the full week. So we did this as well. So we did a small, a lot of these small innovations. We also said that, what loyal customers who've been shopping with us, the platinum customers, the gold customers, we'll give them preferences in slots. So almost 70% of slots we began reserving for those customers who already shopped with us in the past, because we just wanted to ensure that they were happy with us. They were loyal to us when we needed them, and therefore at this point of time, we thought we should give them the first priority. So we took some of those calls as well. And obviously, we ensured that all the safety precautions were taken. We have taken the entire thing of, fumigation, sanitization at warehouses extremely seriously. There is a single point of contact in every store who is totally responsible for this whole process of sanitization, ensuring that social distancing at the workplace, inside the warehouse, inside the store, that is maintained, and basics of hygiene are well taken care of. Individuals are identified or spotted for any symptoms. Their temperatures are scanned before they go out for delivery, before they enter the store for picking, and any of the symptoms are identified. If they are identified, then they are sent back home and quarantined. So we did a lot of these things as well. And obviously we had to, motivate them to turn up for work, which is not be easy. It's like motivating soldiers to go and, into a war. And it's easy for us to be sitting at home and be expecting the soldiers to fight the war. And these delivery boys and pickers are soldiers in today's situation, because they are putting their own lives at risk, the lives of their own families, by going out for work, going out for doing the deliveries. So it's not been very easy, I would say. So in some ways, there is a sense of patriotism as well, because BigBasket has in some ways become a lifeline to the nation, like no government agency ever was in the history of independent India. So that's a matter of pride for everyone. I think that has also been motivating people. The moment we found that the number of people who are turning up is much lower than what we needed, we began working with multiple agencies. So several industries have been decimated. The restaurants have been shut down. Nobody obviously is visiting restaurants. Malls are down. Retail stores are down. So Uber, Ola cabs are not operating in the numbers that they would operate. Their drivers are idle. So we began talking to all of these agencies, all of these industry associations and companies that were out of work. Some of them were okay to work with us, at least temporarily, and some we found were not happy with the kind of work. So some things worked out, some things didn't work out. And slowly, I think people began returning to work as well. India is a poor country, and all said and done, livelihoods need to be made. And a lot of livelihoods were lost because of the lockdown. Slowly, I think essential services were opened up, as a result of which some of the people began returning to work. And gradually, I think we are limping back to normal. Normal would not be the right word. We are limping back, I would say. And we have no idea how this whole crisis is going to unfold. There are multiple points of view. Several experts are saying different things. There is one school of thought which says, livelihoods need to be preserved. So let's begin to unlock, at least in a limited way, slowly. The government says 3rd May. Some governments, I think Maharashtra already said it won't happen before June. Some other states are likely to extend this lockdown period. So we have no idea, what's going to happen. And the belief is that even after lockdown, you need to maintain social distance. You need to take care of yourself. It's like, the reason for the lockdown is not to kill the disease, but to slow down its spread. It's said that Bangalore to Chennai is, let's say, a 6-hour drive. And it's, let's say, 350 kilometers. Whether you take 6 hours or 10 hours, the distance is the same. The speed will change. The lockdown has only slowed down the spread of the disease so that the hospitals and health ecosystem infrastructure can handle it. But once the lockdown is opened up, the spread will again start, it will again expected to, spread, as a result of which there may have to be a series of lockdowns. We have no idea. But I think this entire crisis has brought about a few changes. I think for the first time, working from home is something that is getting accepted. Although it made a lot of sense, I think you need a crisis to make people open-minded and to think out of the box and to accept some idea without a bias and be open to testing it out. So I think there is a great realization that working from home can be equally effective. A lot of work that's performed does not require you to commute through traffic for 2 hours every day, assemble under one roof and do it. A lot of work is about responding to emails. It's about providing inputs for other people, other teams, and receiving, inputs and using those inputs for creating further outputs. And a lot of that does not necessarily require people to talk to each other face to face. You can talk to one another on the phone. A Zoom call is good enough. And there are very few, kinds of work which really require intense discussion, intense face-to-face discussion, and those will, continue. And we've taken a call in BigBasket, for example, that 50% of our workforce in corporate will permanently work from home. In fact, we have surrendered office space, a good chunk of the office space, so that we could get 50% only to work from office and the remaining permanently working from home. There may be some, flux, which is that 50% is working at office could keep changing, rotating. Some people could go into the office and some people who are in office could start working from home. That will depend upon the requirements and the dispositions of the teams in place. So working from home is suddenly, becoming accepted, and collaboration tools are becoming more and more relevant. Innovation is happening around those collaboration tools. I think entertainment, the nature of entertainment is going to change. People are unlikely to visit a multiplex, for a very long time. They're unlikely to visit a mall for a very long time. And a very long time means, a couple of years. It will be very risky for people to just randomly walk into, a public place. So I think people gatherings will suffer. Anything which depended upon a bunch of people gathering. So all event management companies will suffer. All classroom related training will go away. It will move online. Entertainment will move online. You will have gaming companies. You will have, online training, online webinars, online masterclasses. Universities are going online. Foreign universities are going online. You can sit in India and, pay the fees for a University of Texas at Austin and get a degree from that university. So a limited face-to-face, but mostly online kind of education is happening. Schools are going online, and for the first time, I think there is a realization that education can also be handled online to a large extent. You don't need to build expensive, put up expensive buildings, physical infrastructure. So that seems to be such a waste of time, waste of resources. So I think some realizations are happening. What's not clear to me is that how quickly this crisis will go away, or are some of these changes going to be with us for 5 years, 10 years, and for a very long time, or will things go back to normal? That's not very clear. My own sense is that many of these are there for some years at least to come. So that's broadly what I have to say. And at this point of time, I think let me open it up for questions.
Yeah. So thank you, sir. And now we'll be taking up questions. I'll be reading out the questions and you can answer them. So to what magnitude are B2C e-commerce companies effectively solving essential requirements of people? And how are you planning to enter into tier 3 cities and lower?
Tier 3 cities and lower, we have no plans to enter, because at the end of it, every business has to be sustainable, which means that you have to be able to run it profitably. So we are currently in 26 cities, 9 cities are tier 1, the remaining 17 are tier 2 cities. Some of these tier 2 cities itself, we are finding that our value proposition is not resonating very well with the residents, because why do you shop online? You shop online because of two things. One is convenience, you don't want to go through traffic. Other is assortment, which is you get a wide range of products. Now in a tier 3 city or even some tier 2 cities, convenience is not a problem, because people actually go out. They love to go out and meet friends, use this opportunity for socializing, meeting up with people. And the city itself is not big, so they can just step out and go a little distance, and traffic is not much. And therefore delivering at optimal costs and still making the profit is not possible in tier 3 cities. So we have absolutely no plans at the moment. Tier 1 cities, we have just begun scratching the surface. I think the markets are very deep in tier 1 itself and and tier 2. So we will go deeper into these 26 cities, and we are likely to go into tier 3.
So, and what are the challenges for newcomers in the field of e-commerce?
I didn't get the question exactly.
Like, what are the main challenges for the newcomers in the field of e-commerce?
Or newcomers.
Yeah.
So newcomers, see, e-commerce is not an easy industry, right? So it needs big capital and deep management skills. So therefore, there will not be many. Amazon, you will find a BigBasket, you will find a Udaan, you will find a Flipkart. So a limited number of companies. And let me just give you a sense. India's online, retail is just about 2 to 3%, or maybe max 4 to 5%. About 15% is modern trade. Modern trade means big bazaar stores, or for example, a D-Mart, large physical stores, large format stores. And the remaining 80 to 82% is the small kiranas. In my sense, this situation is not going to change overnight. It's not easy for new entrants to enter either modern trade or e-commerce because they need deep pockets, a lot of capital, and management competence. It's not easy for anybody and everybody to enter this. There are a lot of challenges.
I see. So, one of the top level concerns these days for food and beverage industry is the supply chain challenge. So, how food industry is responding to this, and do you think there will be any permanent changes to supply chain due to COVID-19 breakdown?
Yeah, obviously, supply chains are being impacted, and interestingly, the food supply chain is not as simple as it may sound. It's a fairly complex supply chain. So I would say when modern retail started in India, national supply chains began getting built for the first time. Earlier, all the supply chains were local. Whatever you bought in Meerut was sourced from in and around Meerut, because there was no big bazaar which could buy stuff from Bangalore or Mumbai for Meerut markets. But once these large format retail stores came in, national supply chains got created, which means that onion went from one part of India, which could be from Nasik to Kolkata or even Jalandhar, or Maggi noodles or Coca-Cola made in some city in South India travel to North India, and vice versa. So these national supply chains got created. With e-commerce coming in, international supply chains got created. So many products began getting sourced from the US, from Europe, from China to India, and consumers are buying products, including food items, including exotic fish, salmon, which are coming in cold supply chains, in containers, and brought in cold local trucks to the doorstep of the customer. So these supply chains are getting disrupted, obviously, and as long as a crisis like this will disrupt the way life is led. 2008 crisis changed a lot of things for a lot of people. So this crisis is also going to impact supply chains. So it's like BigBasket, I said, right? We are finding it difficult to get people to work because of the lockdown, and people want to be safe at home. They don't want to take a risk. Similarly, companies which are producing products like Hindustan Unilever, Procter and Gamble, Nestle, they're also having a shortage of people turning up at their factories. So they're not able to produce their entire range of products. So therefore, they're also focusing on a fewer products. So the entire assortment has been reduced significantly. They were producing to 3,000 items. Now they're just producing 50, those which are in high demand, those which are essential. The exotic stuff, they have stopped. So I would say that it will take some time for supply chains to get, reconstructed, supply chains to get rebuilt, and the entire transport system is also, losing steam because the trucking industry has been affected as a result of this. So obviously, at a very high level, supply chains have been disrupted. I don't know for how long they will remain disrupted. And for the first time, I think we are realizing that we don't need so much of food that we are talking about. We don't need to have that exotic biscuit with cream in the center. Why do you need that? You can live without that. Life is equally good. So I think the number of assortments have come down, and I don't know how long it will be before we get back to all our bad ways of consuming such a wide range of products.
Yeah. So, how do you make sure that you don't affect the livelihood of small or mini scale sellers?
Actually, we don't, for the simple reason that I told you, e-commerce is just 3 to 5% of the entire retail industry in India. 80 to 82% are all the small retailers. Small retailers, the kirana stores, the lady at the roadside who's selling the jamun fruit or spinach, they are the 85% of retail in India. And if you ask me personally, I want them to do well. I don't care who I work for, whether it's BigBasket or anybody. I am for the underdog. I want them to do well. In fact, if you ask me who I should buy from, I'll say support the small kirana stores, small supplies, support the small lady, little lady who is selling you the spinach in the roadside. Their livelihoods need to be preserved. Come to BigBasket only if you want convenience or if you want a wider range. But please support the kiranas. We have absolutely no way we can affect those kiranas. We just entire e-commerce put together is less than 3 to 5%, and the thing is controlled by is really about the small mom and pop stores. They will survive, and we actually want them to do well.
So, how is BigBasket maintaining the hygiene of employees when they are working and delivering? And also, how do they make sure that the items they are delivering are not being contaminated?
Yeah. So I told you, I think, as part of my session that we have we have taken this entire thing very seriously. Sanitization, fumigation. There is a corona warrior in every store, in every warehouse, whose only job is to ensure that all the safety and hygiene standards are met, social distancing is taken care of. Everybody working there is using personal protection equipment like gloves and masks. Every delivery boy is tested, for temperature before going out and other symptoms for deliveries, and uses a fresh pair of gloves at the customer premises before making the deliveries. We have moved to contactless delivery as well, where we place everything in paper bags outside a customer residence. We don't even enter the customer residence anymore. At the warehouses and stores, every single surface is sanitized every 2 hours. So we are taking all these steps to try and ensure that our people remain safe, our products remain safe, and therefore customers remain safe.
All right. So we'll be wrapping up now. And thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule. It was a pleasure to have you as a speaker, and I'm sure audience is grateful for your insights and knowledge. And now I would like to thank the audience also, and stay tuned for future webinars and stay safe. So yeah, we'll be
Thank
closing
you.
it.
Thanks, Prachi. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, participants.
Oof.